Welcome one, welcome all to Save Me Jebus, episode 4.
Oh, save me, Jebus!
Oh my god, I've been doing this for a month now. We're on the 4th week. Thank you to the 15 of you a week that usually tune in to listen. It means a lot to me. It really does. 15 of you, that's half a classroom. And I think that a lot of people get really caught up in numbers, but you have to remember that each person or each view is a person or so. And that's just the number of people in a room that are listening to you. So if you got 15 people, that's half a classroom. I don't know. Anyways, all right. So let's get into episode 4 of The Simpsons. I thought that this episode was actually pretty interesting. I thought that, oh no, I'm going to go ahead and say the thing that everybody says that's pretty annoying. I thought that when I went into this episode, I wasn't going to like it, but it turned out that I really liked it. And that's exactly the case. I remember this episode, and there's the iconic scene of the family electrocuting themselves during therapy, and I thought that was really going to only be the highlight of the episode, but it was a pretty good episode. I'm kind of torn between this week's episode and the last few episodes of the show, because it was good, it was solid. There are things in this episode that really make me like it more so than the last episodes. One example is Marge. Marge finally has a more significant role in the episodes, or in the show, at least in this episode, more so than the previous episodes. But let's just get into it, okay? I just think that this episode was really good, just because it really just highlights what the core appeal of The Simpsons is and why people just love it so much, and why it was so significant for its time as a TV show, let alone an animated TV show. See, The Simpsons came at a time when American sitcoms were mostly middle class to upper middle class role model families, and usually the TV shows, or usually the plot of the sitcoms, would revolve around a generally very morally good family that is faced with some ethical dilemma. And but it never, from what I understand, it never really touched on bases of that appeal to the general audience of the US. Everyone was usually well off financially. Everyone was usually a happy, loving family, and the kids were usually really good. And no, we don't get that with The Simpsons. The Simpsons is all about the dysfunction. It's all about the chaos. It's all about leaning into it and kind of making people feel better about themselves, because at least they're not as demented as The Simpsons, but also understanding where they are and understanding that their problems are problems that they face themselves in real life. Just kind of like how I was leaning, kind of like the way I was talking about episode 1 and the last episode, Homer's Odyssey. In episode 1, it was all about Homer and the Simpsons just having a budget Christmas and not having the money to afford Christmas presents for the family. And that's a real thing. That's something that people actually face during the holidays. The holidays are extremely stressful. And this last episode about with Homer, where he lost his job, people lose their jobs all the time, and they usually lose them over silly things. Like I said, Homer just knocked over a pipe and he lost his job. And while in real life that certainly that would get him fired, oh my god, later on in the show he does things way more crazier, and he doesn't get in trouble for it. But then by then the show does become more cartoony. But at least right now in season 1, and the appeal of the Simpsons is that all of these characters are extremely relatable. So without further ado, let's get into episode 4. And I can't even remember the name of the episode right now. But just to jump into it, the Bart chalk gag. It said, "I will not burp in class," and so that's extremely lame. And so I'm giving that a 1 out of 5. It's so whatever. And it was kind of when I watched this, when I watched this episode and I read the chalk gag. You know what? I think that I'm gonna drop them from the show because they're just not that good, and I don't think that they're made for the point. They're not made to make you laugh out loud like crazy. I think it's just one of those things that when you're watching the opening, it's just kind of like, oh, I wonder what it's gonna say this week or whatever. So I'm dropping it. The couch gag also was extremely weak, but I think I'm gonna continue with that because I know that the couch gags get extremely better. This week's gag was Homer can't fit into the couch, and so he falls out, and there's a pop sound. And that's a 2 out of 5 if I've ever seen one. So the episode starts off with Lisa and Bart arguing. And Homer comes in wearing a striped shirt, and it looks so cool. But it's actually just his regular white t-shirt, and then the animators just drew a stripe over it because it looks pretty odd if you stare at it long enough. And he asks them, what are they fighting about? And the kids say, we're fighting about who loves you more. And he's like, oh, okay, go ahead. And the kids go, no, you love him more. No, you love him more. No, you love him more. So Homer's all stressed out because the family is going to the company picnic at Mr. Burns' mansion. And he wants to make sure that he leaves a great impression on Mr. Burns. He has Marge make a bunch of gelatin desserts because apparently he made a comment once that he really liked them. And so he has Marge make a bunch of them. I thought it was just one, but then when they're actually pulling up to the mansion, you actually see the family all carrying a gelatin dessert in their laps. So that was pretty funny. But the payoff to the joke was that is when Homer presents Mr. Burns the gelatin gifts, Mr. Burns is immediately annoyed, and he tells him, go ahead and put it with the rest of them. And it's just like a tower of gelatin gifts. So apparently, and I'm thinking that it was Homer, someone spread the information that Mr. Burns likes gelatin. And so everybody at the nuclear power plant got him the gelatin. And so we seen Mr. Smithers, and he's yellow now, but weirdly yellow. Like he's yellow, but his hair is still the same color as last time, like a gray/blue type of thing. And Mr. Burns calls Bart Brat, which is really interesting if you know the meta of The Simpsons, because apparently everybody in Matt Groening, Mr. Matt G. Everybody in The Simpsons is named after one of his real family members. Homer, Marge, Lisa, and Maggie. But when it came to writing Bart, he decided not to name the character after himself, and instead went with an anagram for Brat. So Mr. Burns calls Bart Brat, and then after what he is named after. So yeah, so that was cool. That was a nice little thing there. God, I really just want to jump into the plot of this. I really don't want to talk too much because okay. So I'm just gonna really quickly recap this, but pretty much Homer is just trying to make everybody act normal. He's afraid of losing his job. He's afraid of doing anything that rubs Mr. Burns the wrong way. And so the family, they all do something that makes Homer uneasy. For example, Marge, she goes and gets drunk. Gosh, I don't remember what Lisa did. But Bart and Lisa, they're fighting each other, and they're running around everywhere. Mr. Burns notices them, and Maggie, she's playing with the she's watching the elves, Elfo from Enchanted. He's watching them on the telly. Yeah, so Marge is hanging out with the other wives, and she gets extremely drunk. Homer notices it, and they break into song, which was really funny. Okay, so Homer tells Bart that it's time for the father-son race, and he tells him, like, you know the rule, right? And then Bart goes, yeah, let Mr. Burns win. So they have the race. Mr. Burns is in the lead because literally they give him about maybe a 5-10 step count. I don't know. They give him some ridiculous head start before anybody decides to move. And Bart gets annoyed, and he decides that he's just gonna go for it. And just when Bart is about to win, he passes up Mr. Burns. Homer freaks out and he jumps after him. So the Simpsons are being dysfunctional. They're being chaotic. They're not blending in well with the rest of the workers. As they're leaving a family in front of Homer, they're walking out, and the boy tells the dad that he really loves him or something, and he gives him a kiss. And Homer tries to do the same thing in front of Mr. Burns, and Mr. Burns notices that Homer was just trying to get his attention or whatever. He calls him out. He says, Homer tries to bribe Bart into kissing him, and Mr. Burns recognizes the attempt, and Smithers says, fabulous observation, sir. And Mr. Burns smiles, which is really funny because Smithers is obviously sucking up to Mr. Burns, but Mr. Burns doesn't catch it in that instance. He noticed it when Homer did it, but it was because when Homer did it, it was so blatant. He was bribing his son right in front of him. And with Smithers, it was a little bit more subtle, and Mr. Burns didn't notice it this time. So anyways, so that family is walking in front of Homer, and Homer says, like, hey, at least we now we get to put off the charade or something like that. And the guy in front of him doesn't really know what he's talking about. And he's like, come on, that whole kissing thing, loving each other. And the man says that he pities him. And so Homer has this moment where he sees that family, he sees the way they're treating each other, and he sees them like angels. And as a matter of fact, as they're pulling off, they start descending into heaven. And then he takes a look at his family, and they're all demons. It's so sad the way he sees his family. So this is pretty much where the plot of the episode just kicks in. And it's Homer wanting to fix his family, which is very interesting because later on he just leans into that chaos. He knows what him and his family are, but at least now he's trying to do something about it, and it's something that we'll see more from Marge than we'll see from Homer. So it starts off with Homer just trying to talk to the family as they're watching TV, and Homer says, hey, look, yesterday was really embarrassing. We need to do something about it. So he wants to make the family eat at the dinner table. And he wants to have grace. Bart decides that he's going to say grace. And he says, rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub. They all begin to gorge their mouths, including Marge, which was really interesting. And so Homer decides that he's going to say prayer. And he's just bad-mouthing the family. He tells the family that sometimes he thinks that they're the worst family in town. And Marge's answer is, maybe we should just move to a larger community. Oh my god, Marge is so a part of the problem. Homer decides that he's just gonna go and compare themselves to other families. So he gathers everybody, and they just go start standing in front of other people's houses. And they're just peeping inside just to see what it's like. And of course, everyone has a better life than The Simpsons, making Homer feel justified in his attempt to try and correct their issues. And so it doesn't work. one of the families that they were peeping in on recognizes or hears the noises that the Simpsons are making, so they grab so the dad grabs the shotgun and starts shooting at the Simpsons, and they take off, and then they go home. So Homer decides that he's just gonna go to the bar, and it is at the bar where he sees the commercial for the therapist. And he says, life solutions aren't at the bottom of the bottle, they're on TV. Yeah. So this is where he gets the idea to go to the therapy. And the commercial says something like life, gosh, an internal bliss or double your money back or something like that. But before this actually happens, the cops arrive and they have a police dog. And he starts growling at Homer, and they say, "Oh yeah, we're looking for a family of peeping toms." So that was the conclusion to that joke. I just wanted to make sure I included it somewhere because it was a pretty great moment. So he goes and approaches the family, and they're all watching it. They're watching Itchy and Scratchy, and Homer comes in. He's like, "We're gonna have a family meeting," and Lisa says, "Why can't we have a family meeting when you're watching TV?" Oh my god. Lisa was really outspoken in this episode, and it just makes me love her so much. I love all of the members of the family, all of them. But Marge and Lisa are especially special in this episode. So if you haven't seen this episode, just go watch it because it's just so full of good moments. So apparently they don't have the money. They need $250. They have $150 in the college fund, and they're gonna use it. Lisa is extremely bothered by this because, well, she wants to go to college, and Homer's like, well, what's the point? They're not gonna get into college. Okay, so the answer to getting the other $150 is to pawn off the television. And so he does. And even Marge is not okay with Homer pawning off the TV. She says that he's driving a stake through the ones that love you. And Homer's response is, "Hey, no pain, no gain." They're at the therapist's office and they're waiting in line. And this family comes out who just got the treatment from the doctor. And they look exactly like the Simpsons. They're just Simpson doppelgangers. They come out looking fixed and happy, and the doppelganger version of Homer has hair, which is pretty funny. So the doctor tells the family, like, maybe you guys recognize me from TV. And Lisa replies, "We would if we had one." Oh man. So the doctor's first exercise is to have the family draw the roots of their unhappiness, and everybody draws Homer. Homer, though, forgets what the assignment is, and he decides to draw a plane instead. The doctor says that, "Oh, so you guys all see Homer as an ogre," and Lisa and Marge, they disagree. No. And Bart goes, "Right on, Doc, another successful diagnosis." And this upsets Homer, so he starts attacking him. Or he makes an attempt at attacking Bart, and the doctor says, no. Instead of actually physically hurting each other, why not use this? And he gives him some foam clubs. And they're all trying to hit each other, but of course, because it's foam, it's not supposed to hurt, which is kind of the point. And Bart says, "Hey, this isn't working. It's better without the padding." And so he takes it off and he hits the doctor. And he's like, "See?" So the doctor says, "Okay, well, we need to do electric therapy." The doctor explains that the whole point is that if somebody says something that hurts you emotionally, then you hurt them physically, and until you guys are all feeling pain. And that way you won't want to hurt each other anymore. But of course, this doesn't work. Everyone just starts shocking each other. It starts off with Homer and Bart. And then Bart shocks Lisa. And Marge is upset because the family would actually shock each other. Lisa and Bart are shocking one another. So then Marge shocks them. And then it just kind of descends into madness as everyone just starts shocking each other for whatever reason. And Maggie's just having fun just pressing all the buttons. Why Maggie was hooked up, I don't know. I don't think she should have been in it. So it doesn't work. it doesn't work. The doctor kind of goes mad, and he's just like, I can't do it. I cannot do it. So the doctor actually pulls the plug, and Marge says, I thought we were making real progress. Oh, man. So he admits defeat. And Homer says, well, hey, wait a minute. You said that if you don't fix us, then it's double our money back. A family bliss or double our money back, which is the slogan from the commercial. And the doctor's like, well, you're not really going to make me. And then Homer goes, yeah, for sure. So they get paid out in $500. And the Simpsons are extremely proud that $500 for being incurable. And they're all happy for Homer. They thought that it was a pleasant surprise that he made them go and do this, because now Homer's gonna go and get them a real TV. and that's where the episode ends. I definitely like this episode, but I'm kind of torn between liking this one and liking the last one. It's kind of a little bit in between. I like the last one because it's just Homer, just a descendant into the depression and then just coming up. It gets a little goofy towards the end, but the first part is extremely solid. This one just had character moments from all of them. It had Lisa, who's the smart mouth. It had Bart just being the brat as typical. Homer trying to fix the family, and Marge just being naive. Well, I thought we were making real progress, right? yeah, for sure. So it was really good. Everyone had a chance to shine. This episode is just a good example of why The Simpsons were so special when the show released. And if anybody were to ask me, what's an episode to recommend from season 1, it would be this one. Like, this would be the first one. It was like, you know what? If you really want to know what these characters are like, you can watch episode 1 or you can watch episode 4, because it has a little bit good of everything, and that's great. The family is a dysfunctional mess, but that's what makes them so lovable. And so for my favorite moment of this episode was probably the family peeping into the windows and the cops later looking for them, just in case you were wondering. And that puts us into next week, which is titled Bart the General. Terrorized by a school bully, Bart seeks counsel from Grandpa Simpson. And I kind of remember this episode, but not really, not all that much. We'll see what it is. Bye, cha.